Hey, everybody, and welcome to day 2 of the NYU Game Center end of year show for 2021, where we celebrate the students that are graduating from the NYU Game Center and showcase the amazing projects that they've been working on. Once again, I'd like to start out by thanking our sponsors who make the NYU Game Center event series possible: Fresh Planet, Take Two Interactive, Empire State Development, and Parsec. So thanks a lot to those guys for keeping us on air and keeping our event series going. I also want to remind everybody that we are fundraising throughout tonight's show for Game Devs of Color Expo. This is a terrific organization, and they amplify the voices of people of color working in the game industry. They have great conferences. And so all night we will be accepting donations, and we are also going to be tripling the value of every donation that comes in. So if you are a Game Center alum and you donate to Game Devs of Color tonight, we have an alum from our MFA program, Ilya Zaremsky, who is going to be matching every donation that comes in, and the department itself will be matching every donation that comes in. So your donations will be tripled. And so I really encourage you to donate to this. Game Devs of Color is awesome, and we love supporting them. Also, tickets for the September Game Devs of Color event are available. You should buy your tickets now and support it. It's great, it's terrific. Links are in the chat. Also in the chat is links to our itch.io page, where you can get direct thumbs on access to all of the games that you see tonight. So if you want to check these games out and support them, download them, play them, I encourage you to head over to itch.io and check them out there. And also, just in mentioning the chat, things got really rowdy in the chat yesterday during day 1, and it was fantastic. So I want to encourage you to keep hyping up the teams. They love it when they see you getting excited in the chat for their projects. So let's keep that energy going all night. Make them feel special on this important night. So let's keep it going. All right. Thank you, chat. Okay, so now with no further ado, I'm going to turn it over to the hosts for the first segment of tonight's show, Game Center faculty, Charles Pratt and Greg Heffernan. So over to you guys. How are you doing tonight?
Hey, thank you for that introduction.
Good. Let's
okay.
Good. All right. Well, then take it away.
All right. Well, we're going to be jumping into the first game for tonight, our first capstone game from the BFA, which is Rewilding. So we're going to watch a trailer for that right now. All
Gardening.
right. Round of applause. Welcome. Our first group for tonight, Rewilding. We've got like a Brady Bunch situation here going on. This is one of the larger groups for Capstone this year. I want to start out our questions by talking about how this project developed. Specifically, this was a project that I believe began last year in Capstone and has continued all the way through, but has gone through some pretty big changes in the way it works, but also visually. And Dayun, I understand you were the art director for this game. Could you talk a little bit about how this game developed over the course of the last year?
So I was not only the art director, but I was also the concept artist for this team. And it was amazing. When I first encountered this game, it was called My Green Age. And we had systems that were very modular. We had plants that were still working with each other. And throughout this past year, I've been searching for basically like the best, most beautiful way to make beautiful combinations of plants when planted next to each other. And so most of my process has been gearing towards how to make this not only welcoming and loving, but also just, meditative and just having nice vibes.
The vibes are nice. Without fail.
Greg is our vibe expert here.
The
We're
vibes
throughout
are
the night.
high.
Could you talk a little bit more about how the game works? We saw a little bit of the trailer, but who are you? What are you doing? Stuff that the trailer is very evocative, but doesn't necessarily go into details about that.
Yeah, so this is a meditative ecology game. It's important to us that it's an ecology game, right? This is, we find a lot of games that use metaphors of agriculture don't really get at this thing that is really special of trying to rehabilitate nature, and it's something that we really want to see in games and create this experience of sort of connecting with nature in a world where people are forced away from it. And so in the game, you plant every day and then go to sleep for a month. It takes place over hundreds of years as you attempt to revitalize this area and make your way into the future.
I have a question for the whole team. Since there were six or seven of you I'm seeing, I'm curious, across the many classes that you took in Game Center, where did you draw what of those classes influenced you? Because I imagine this wasn't just a capstone project. I imagine you were all kind of collectively taking experiences from different classes you were taking. So I'm curious to anybody in the team can speak to what classes influenced this game. Where did you apply lessons you were learning in those classes? Because this is big and intricate and interesting.
Yeah, intro to game development for me was with you, Greg. That was really helpful for me. That was my first step in like 3D modeling, especially 3D modeling for games. And that class really planted the seed of like, okay, I can do this. Like we can do a game that's bigger than anything we've done before.
Yeah.
Like being able to like feel that kind of potential and like get my hands on a game that was like much bigger than like a small game jam or like a week project was really helpful for me and like influential in how I pushed this project.
Cool.
I would be remiss if I didn't mention our independent study with Charles Pratt here. And, even though it started after we began working on the project, it's changed so much since then. And I think, like, most importantly, it really gave us such a good foundation to work on it and to keep working on it because we're not done yet. We got 2 years running strong and we're excited to keep going.
I think personally for me, professional practice has definitely been one of the more helpful classes to really have a perspective and like more of a scope to where our game is going to be headed towards after I've graduated and sort of like what we should be looking forward to doing. And I think that kind of experience and having sort of like a outsider perspective beyond school was very, important and also helpful for me.
Professional practice. I'm curious. This is what is this to folks who are watching and curious as to what that class entails in a nutshell?
Yeah, sure. So the class is taught by Eric Zimmerman, and he does a very good job designing sort of these exercises for and very realistic exercises for students to not only explore and learn about actual drop tests, but also scoping in terms of budgeting, how your game should be looking like for a set amount of budget. And so we kind of work through various design problems and questions, and we really hone our skills to look at products in a certain way that is, I believe, like very different from all the other classes in the Game Center.
That's cool. That feels like rooted in the practical and in like considering this beyond, what you're doing in school and thinking about how just casual players or players who are coming to this on like an itch.io or a Steam page are going to see this and they're going to think about this as it stacks up with other games that have this aesthetic or that use a lot of the same gameplay style. So that's super useful to be mindful of that.
If you all wanted people to know one thing about your game, what would it be? One sentence. What's the one thing that they should know about your game if they want to follow it?
Ooh.
Great, thank you. Good answer. We're going to be transitioning.
You can pick up trash in the game. That's
a tough
useful
question. I would say, like, I think what makes our game special is it has everything. Like, we've really tried to put everything in the game. Voice acting, music.
It's got everything. If you liked everything, this is the next game, like everything. Thank you all very much. It's an incredibly impressive project. We're all really looking forward to seeing how it develops. We're going to transition to our next project now, which is Ghost Friends. But thank you all to the Rewilding team.
Bravo.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right, we're here with June, the creator of Ghost Friends. June, welcome.
Wow.
Could you tell us a little bit about what we just saw? What is Ghost Friends? How would you describe it?
Hi there. Ghost Friends is a visual novel game with a stealth game combined together. Yeah, it's a game about making friends and finding clues in order to make friends in a stealth area and talking to people in a visual novel section. So I just wanted to combine the two genres and see if I can make some magic happen.
Interesting. And what motivated you to combine those two genres?
I think one thing I always when in terms of visual novels, I always think about how people tend to think of them as just like reading through the game and like making choices here and there. And I wanted to make a game that was more involved and also like show a contrast between the passive visual novel and the more action-oriented top-down part to kind of keep the player's attention alert at all times.
This isn't the first time I've seen a talking bush in your games, June. Is this like a motif? Is this like your signature?
Yeah, I want, to stand out from everyone. I want to kind of keep like a little mascot character, I would say, within my games. He doesn't show up all the time, but when he's there, it's a little treat from me to you guys.
That's cool. Is this a total solo operation? You're pretty much head down working on your own, or are other collaborators involved?
Yeah, it started off solo for Capstone, but eventually I want to be able to work with a proper artist in order to better capture the visual novel feel, as well as get better sprite animations for the future of this game, which I'm proud of what I made. I want to be able to keep working on it more.
What's the play length do you anticipate? Like, do you see how big this is, or are you kind of just letting it happen? Like, you're just writing and creating and seeing where the road takes you?
Kind of a mix of both. I kind of always envisioned this game to have sort of like a Mega Man feel, where you would get to pick from different levels, and those kind of have like a similar like 30-minute length, or maybe just 20-minute length. But I say that now, but who knows what will happen. But yeah, I want to be able to make like a sizable visual novel and a sizable like stealth game portion that goes hand in hand together.
That's cool. What was the? Go ahead, Charles.
I was just going to say, Ghost Friends is a very evocative title. It's a game about making friends, but I think it's not ghosts in the traditional sense, right? So like, could you talk a little bit about where the idea for just the themes and the kind of mood of the game came from? Like,
yeah. With visual novels, I find that a lot of them, especially like the ones about like school days and whatnot, are very like upbeat and cheerful. And since I'm contrasting that with like a stealth game where you're trying to hide from enemies, I wanted to kind of put a creepy feel to the game that's sort of like, that's not prominent, but it's hidden underneath, and you kind of get the feeling of that throughout the game, as you kind of sense there's something wrong going on within the world and the person you're talking to, as well as why you're doing this in the first place.
I guess my question now is, what are sort of some of the tools that you've been using to put this together? Because it looks like it could be Unity, it could be RenPy, it could be a few different things. So I'm curious, what are the tools on your belt right now?
So right now, and during Capstone, I've been learning to use Fungus, which is a visual novel plugin.
Fungus.
Yes, and I combined it with something called Top Down Engine, and combining the two was pretty hard, and I still want to be able to iterate it on it more. But having those two plugins helped me create this game at a quicker pace and allowed me to prototype and iterate a lot. And yeah, I want to be able to buckle down and learn more about these two, so I can make a more a bigger whole than it is right now, I would say.
Along those lines, could you talk a little bit about being a solo developer? That seems like a real challenge, and especially I think some of the people in the chat might be in their junior year of the BFA and thinking about Capstone. Talk about your experience being a solo developer for basically over the course of 2 semesters.
it had its ups and downs a lot. I say I'm solo, but I had the support of many friends at the same time, so I wasn't always truly alone. And it was
No.
fun to be able to set my own schedule, of course. But at the same time, there were some times where I would need to go to people just for feedback. And I think the one thing I really learned is that like when going solo, it's important to not stay alone in a space, but rather open yourself up to other people and make yourself known.
100% agree. As a fellow, more often than not solo developer, but then at critical points you bring in some people. You bring in the outside perspective. You bring in the play testing. You bring in you open this up to the community. That's where it really comes alive. That's where you can really like further the work. So yeah, cool. You're solo amongst friends.
Yes, exactly.
Ghost friends.
Oh, well, there you go. There you go. You figured it out.
So June, I think your plans are to continue to work on this now that capstone is over. Where could people learn more about the game, maybe follow its development, and what should we look for as coming next for the project?
Well, for right now, you can find the game on the Ghost Friends Capstone Edition page on my itch page. I want to be able to update the game a little bit from there. And as for the future of the game itself, I want to be able to add more top-down gameplay that you're used to seeing in other style games, and also create more artwork for the game, as well as just improve what's there right now and make something more whole.
Cool. All right.
Feels good.
June, thanks so much.
Great work.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Feels
Keep
good.
on it. Keep on it.
Not easy. All right, June, thanks so much. We're going to move on to our next game of the evening, which is Geist. But thank you very much, June.
Cheers.
Thank you.
We're here with Kevin Ray, part of a team of 2 that worked on Geist in Capstone last year. Kevin, welcome. How you doing?
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm good.
How have things been since graduation? It seems like you've been working on this game.
Yeah, we continued working on it a little bit, mostly just touching things up here and there, making it look a little prettier for the presentation today.
You want to talk a little bit about what it's like to play for people who maybe have just seen the trailer?
Yeah, so it's a stealth action game where essentially you just need to get past all these guards and get to a specific objective. And you can have all these different tools at your disposal. You have a knife for silent takedowns or a gun when you need to go loud. And then you have all these magic powers you can use in different situations for traversal or combat.
I want to call to attention the hand gestures. You've got a lot of interest, especially the left hand. It's doing this. It occasionally does the gun. It does the claw. What was that process for you? Like getting, I mean, that's detail. That's deep hand animation business. What's going on there?
Yeah, we just wanted to make sure that like all the powers, when you use them, translate well, that you're actually doing something, making sure you understand which power you have equipped, because there's a lot of them and they can get kind of confusing if you don't play the game a lot. And so the hand animations were a way to instantly get players to recognize what power they have equipped and what they're going to be doing with them.
That's cool.
Very cool. You have a collaborator on this project, Riley. Do you want to talk a little bit about the sort of different things that the two of you took on and what we should look at as the work of Kevin Ray and what might be what was Riley doing on the project?
Yeah, Riley focused on the movement system, all the parkour, the wall running, the wall jumping. You can even hang on to ledges. He focused mainly on that, and I focused on the powers that the player would use, as well as the AI in the game, because there's 4 different types of enemies that you're going to be fighting against, and I wanted each of them to feel a little bit unique in how they go about attacking you and how they react to the player.
I want to give a shout out to Riley because I remember his midterm, I think it was 2 years ago for my class, where it was like the first time he was wrestling with parkour and wall running and stuff. And it's cool that he's kept at it. It seems like that's something he's dug into, he's latched onto. So yeah, props to Riley for continuing to explore that element of traversal in the game and having it serve this game.
Mm-hmm. Parkour was always a big interest for both of us. I used to do parkour in real life, training and stuff, and I wanted to put it in a game, and so did he. So,
where do you train for parkour in real life?
Anywhere.
Anywhere.
Yeah, anywhere where there's walls or anything to climb, really.
Amazing. In New York, you could train.
That is great.
I did it back when I was in California, but yeah, you can. There's lots of good places in New York as well.
Well, it's great to see that you've channeled that enthusiasm into this. You don't have to like risk injury anymore. You can just have Geist
play this game.
This is your outlet.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
That's awesome. So you all have been like kind of tweaking it over the intervening time since you graduated. What are there next steps for it? Do you intend on continuing to tweak it, or is this meant to be kind of more portfolio piece for both of you? That you're just going to show off your skills?
Yeah, this is mainly a portfolio piece to show off the different parts that we were able to code and produce around all the different aspects of the project. But we always like to hear what people think of the game and maybe return to it at some point if enough people like it. You never know.
It's a cool mix. I like the idea of traversing in this environment. It kind of reminds me of Arcane's first game, Arx Fatalis. You know, Arcane did like the magic powers with parkour. So there's, you know, all of the Dishonoreds and Arx Fatalis and the Might and Magic, whatever that was in the first, the Audis or whatever. But yeah, I'm getting that vibe from this game, and it looks fun and interesting. And
yeah,
engaging.
Those games were huge inspirations for us. We look towards Dishonored a lot, and we also look towards Titanfall for parkour systems, as well as Mirror's Edge. We really wanted to hone in and make sure the parkour felt fun to use.
What is the hardest part of implementing parkour in a game like this, whether it's technical or whether it's like a gameplay challenge? Yes, Arx Fatalis, shout out.
One of the biggest problems were balancing the amount of space you can traverse with parkour while also keeping the stealth aspect of the game intact, because you need a lot of room to be able to sprint across walls and jump and climb everywhere, but also have a fine enough space to hide behind walls and creep up behind enemies and stuff like that. That was the most difficult part.
Interesting. And how would you wrestle with that? Like, how would you try to solve that? Like, what was ultimately the way forward there?
We ended up tweaking level design a lot and just playing it over and over again, play testing with different people. We had a few other collaborators come on and help out along with the project at different points, and we had someone help us with building a new level as well. The one that you see here is made by Carson Decker mostly. And then
Carson.
we just continually tweaked it over the course of play testing.
Playtesting, always key, always helps. Gotta be
we'll
done.
We'll be meeting Carson later in the evening. We are actually maybe a little bit later in the evening, but Kevin, I want to thank you for coming by and showing this game. It's really impressive and really cool, and I'm glad you all have continued to work on it since you graduated. But we're going to go to our next project, which is Blackthorn.
All right, thank you.
All right, we're here with Team Blackthorn after that very exciting and spooky trailer. Welcome, everybody.
High intrigue at Blackthorn.
I wonder if you all could talk a little bit about the game. We've seen the trailer now, but talk a little bit more about what it is and where it comes from, what the development process was like.
Yeah, the original idea really came from old Nancy Drew games. We all played them and were really inspired by them, and kind of this new hype of witch culture that's coming around recently, like Sabrina the Witch, the Netflix show. We really wanted to embody that in the game.
So yeah, were there a couple of like key touchstone games that you were all like, oh yeah, that's the game we want to, that was the one from our youth? Like, is there one in particular that you can point to, or was it like a whole kind of genre or collection?
Well, definitely Nancy Drew, but we also played the Sherlock Holmes games and Obra Dinn for inspiration for our mechanics and background.
Very cool. So the kind of very much in a classic adventure game style, right? So the game is not just an adventure game though, right? Like you have like kind of some mini games in there. There's this interesting evocative like bedroom that we see there at the end. Could you talk a little bit more about the mechanics of the game and how the game actually plays out?
Yeah, it's really based on being a detective game, but using gossip as your information. The mini games kind of serve as something like side for the player to do that we were really enjoying in Nancy Drew that would then lead a way for you to get more information from players.
Cool. Do you want to talk a little bit about what it was like to work in such a large team? This is a little bit of a theme of the BFA capstone games tonight, is that there are several pretty significant teams, 5 people. I think we don't have everybody here, right? I believe Samina Trisher is not here tonight.
Right.
But like, do you want to talk a little bit about working in such a large team?
Yeah, it started out with just me and Samina. She was the designer mainly, and I was doing all the coding, and then we realized we could not complete this idea, just us two. Mickey was the first one to come on because we needed writing help. Neither of us were writers. So she started actually semester 1 when she wasn't even in the class writing for us. And then in the fall, Winland came on and Madison did as well, and we got help with our art, which we desperately needed. So everything started coming together.
Yeah, it's coming together.
I think that helped that we each had kind of our own discipline, and we weren't stepping on each other's toes too much.
So yeah, what's it like managing a project like this? You're all remote. Some of you graduated at different times. Like, what are your strategies for keeping this on track? How do you keep it all? How do you keep the train rolling?
I think a lot of when to meets, a lot of Discord adding, and just setting up meetings way further in advance than we probably expected to when we first started. But that was basically the only way we could all meet at one time, was deciding one time for every week, and we just kind of had to stick to it the best we could.
We definitely,
a lot of Trello.
Oh yes, yeah. We definitely struggled a lot after me and Samina graduated to keep that same schedule, as Mina and me both ended up getting jobs, and our schedule kind of got blown out of the water.
Yeah,
things evolve.
Yeah, this project has been kind of like gone through a few big moments, right? So like, I believe it began before everyone went remote, right? What was that transition like, going to remote and figuring out that process? Like, at what point during development, if we're looking at what you've got now, like how much did you have at that point? And so like, how much of this game has come out of this remote kind of pandemic process?
So around March 12th, all we really had was the ability to walk around the room and click on some characters. All the characters looked exactly the same. There was nothing in the rooms, didn't have a writer yet, so it was really bare bones. But by the end of that semester, we had a couple different models in from Unity Store assets, and you could start to get the feel of who each character was. And we actually had like a real clock in that game where time was progressing like a minute per second. And that gave the feel that we wanted of like time progressing and like going to an event, like class would happen at 9 and you would show up at 9 and class would happen.
Interesting. When did the like serious work on the look and feel start to begin? Because so much of this game is just, really evocative visually. Like, when did the process of figuring out what that art direction would be start, and what was the process of bringing this kind of world around? I think Madison and Winland, that was mostly your department. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. I don't go to NYU. I know Samina. She is the one who introduced me to the team, and I was able to join, and I was like super pumped to work on like a witchy game. And just talking to them, they have like a whole mood board
with how they wanted it to look, like very Sabrina. And I was able to make some models and like some of the environments and lots of feedback. It was a good experience.
I have a question about the mystery aspect, going back to the fact that you're uncovering a mystery or plot. As you continue to make the game, as you continue to make content, dialogue, etc., what are some things you've learned about like writing mystery, or did you have them going in? Did you have like a concept, or did things about mystery creation and writing evolve from the project?
So originally we had a completely different mystery at the very beginning of this. When I joined, there is an entire plot line that doesn't exist now. It's been completely scrapped. So it's been a lot of rewrites, and it's been a lot of like webs and post-it notes on my wall to plan out what's all connecting and what clues people are getting, which I wasn't expecting it to be as detailed as ended up being. So I kind of had to, yeah.
That's
I had to
cool,
teach
though.
myself everything, basically. Yeah.
But the intricacy is going to be good, because you know the deeper you get with your own creation of it, the more the player is going to get to enjoy the fruits of that labor, because it already looks pretty intriguing. And the various characters, I play tested an early build of this earlier in the season, and I could already see the potential for, you know, who are you being friends with, where are you finding rumors, how do those rumors help other people, and then you have to go make some potions. Like, I see a really cool, very, very singular experience here. So
yeah, great job.
excited.
Thank you all, for coming in. We're going to move on to our last BFA game, Be Water, but I want to congratulate all of you on what looks like a really, really fun, interesting mystery game, and I hope we get to see more of it in the coming months.
Thank you.
So thank you all.
Thank you.
Congrats.
Thank
Congrats.
you.
Thank you.
All right, I want to welcome to the stage Solo Cell, the Be Water team. How's it going, everybody?
Doing great, Charles. Excellent.
Hey, Charles.
Yeah, fantastic.
Be
Very
water.
cool. Yeah. So could you talk a little bit about the game and what we just saw?
Yeah, so Be Water is a single-player puzzle platformer in which you play as a water droplet who falls in love with a houseplant across the apartment. So you have to traverse across a countertop in order to get to your one true love.
It's romantic.
Yes, very romantic. And the main methods of traversal are switching in between liquid, solid, and gas. And yeah, that's kind of the 30-second pitch of our game.
Yeah.
Cool. How did this idea come about? Like, where did the idea for being a drop of water, trying to water a plant across the room? Like, it seems like an interesting, cool, quirky idea. Where did it come from?
Yeah, so at the start of Capstone, we were sort of just like slinging ideas out like 24/7, like trying to have something that stuck. And I was like, I got this cuckoo idea about being a drop of water. Nothing else, just the water. Nothing else was thought of. And everyone really liked it. So we just decided to like go with that. And then the game really just evolved from there. I don't remember when we introduced the plant, but I'm pretty sure it was super early on. And it just
Mustache came out. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Emerged. No, this is cool. I'll say that you probably are aware of this, but Carson was in my level design studio class this spring, so there was some work done purely on the level design, and I'm curious how that affected the bigger project. What was it like, Carson, working on the level design within the context of a larger team that was doing your capstone project?
Yeah, I thought it was actually pretty seamless as far as I was concerned, because it was sort of like a very intertwined sort of thing. So I would be working on the stuff for like class, but it also still pertained to our actual capstone. So we were all kind of doing a couple levels in tandem with each other. And so everything kind of ended up carrying over, like just the kind of the philosophies of wanting to use all the household objects as different things, trying to create like this at least somewhat believable like counter space. So yeah, it was very much seamless, kind of switching between the two modes, I suppose.
What sort of gameplay challenges come up when you're trying to work at like an intentional like I shrunk the world scale? Like, I feel like there's a few games that have done that, obviously movies that have done that, but like games specifically, I don't know, are there specific things that come up that are both like challenging but also opportunities? I don't know, speak to like what's it like to work in a small scale like this, or like.
Yeah, as I mentioned, it was like a very large challenge is trying to make things still believable within the sort of environment, because you're having like this very sort of cluttered kitchen counter space where like you can understand that maybe all of this stuff is scattered about, but then at the same time you have to make sure that all these objects are like also platforms and different aspects of the environment. And so you have to really sort of balance like what to put where. Like, it's a very much a different thing where it's like, oh, do I put a pot here, but the handle you can potentially jump on and get over the pot when you shouldn't? Or should I put like a soda can where it's a little taller, but it's a thinner platform? So it's very much that like towing that line between sort of having these realistic objects while also making like a good platformer level, I suppose, in puzzles.
What else? What do we? Go ahead, Charles.
No, Greg, go ahead. Come on.
I'm just curious, what have we yet to see? We've got fans, we've got knives, we've got cups. Like, can we get a preview of what more the modeling team has in store for us?
Yes. Hello, I am the modeling team. I can actually speak to a lot of cut content. I think is probably, what we could talk about the most. In the game, there is one section where you turn into an ice cube and you sort of use the momentum or like the slickness of ice to sort of slide along a surface and push a button. That idea of using ice to sort of slide down ramps and like launch yourself was originally planned to be included in a lot more areas of the game. So we had things like Hot Wheels tracks planned, using like curved, like I believe in our proof of concept, we had like a little ladle that you could slide down and like launch yourself off of. So that's sort of one of the other big concepts that we didn't get to work as much into the game as we hoped, but it's still in the game. So we got that.
And it's here, and it's in the code, and it's in the asset folder,
and it's in our hearts,
and it's in your hearts.
So this is another pretty big team, but there are even people that are on the team that aren't here tonight. Could you talk about who they are and what they did on the project?
Absolutely. So we had a team of 7, and those who haven't joined us tonight are Elizabeth Yuan and Maddie Sutton. Elizabeth was our UI UX designer, also concept artist, and Maddie was one of our programmers. Both of them are so incredibly wonderful, and we are holding them close in our hearts tonight, because without them, we certainly wouldn't have gotten the game we have now. So shout outs to them.
Just to be clear, they're fine. It sounds like something terrible happened to them, but they're fine.
No, yeah,
right?
they're okay.
They're out on a walk.
They're alive. They're alive.
All right.
Very much alive.
We know that for sure. Well, this was all really, really impressive. Any advice very quickly for other people who might be planning to do capstones in groups or even large groups? Any advice you all have for them?
Use Jira, I think, is a big one.
Yeah,
project management is key.
Use Jira, and if you're planning on doing like a group bigger than 3 people, you're definitely going to want to think about having a producer because it's very difficult to communicate between teams. So if you have somebody navigating that, then you'll be.
Who's that here?
That was me.
All right. You realize your value on the team.
Yeah.
Self-recommending.
That's amazing. I want to thank you all. Your game looks incredible.
Very slick.
I want to thank you all for coming by. This is actually the last BFA game we're looking at tonight. We're going to take a 5-minute break. We're going to see a video by Ilya Zaremsky to talk about the donation drive we're doing with Game Devs of Color. And so I'm signing off as well as Greg. Greg, I want to thank you for coming in and all your amazing questions tonight. So yeah.
Thanks for having me. Good stuff all around.
Both.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks, everybody. And we'll be back in all right, we'll be back in 5 minutes, everybody.
I'm not here to tell you about a responsibility to give. I'm here to tell you about an opportunity to win. Today as a community, we have an opportunity to win at donating to the Game Devs of Color Expo. Because when you click the link below to donate, not only will the Game Center match your donation dollar for dollar, but so will I, up to $5,000 each. So donate now and triple your impact. And if you're loaded, match my match and help us drive the multiplier even higher. Cheers. I'm not here to tell you about a responsibility to give.
Hello. All right, we're back with our final stretch of the NYU Game Center Showcase for 2021. I'm Naomi Clark. I'm one of the faculty at the NYU Game Center, and I think I'll declare that as of right now, I'm taking over as the chair of the NYU Game Center. I'll just stake my flag in the ground and say that this is the moment when I seize control and usurp the Game Center from Frank. Who we'll see again at least once more, I think. And with me today, I'm very excited to say, is Sarah Elmaleh, our guest for the next 4 games. Sarah, for those of you who don't know her, is a storied voice actress across a lot of different games. Some of you may remember her from Gone Home, but also much more recently, For Honor, Gears 5, Spider-Man Miles Morales, in which she got beat up a bunch of times by Spider-Man, Anthem. Yeah, did I say Days Gone?
No, also Days Gone. That's true.
All right, yeah. So we're really lucky to have her here. Looking at the next few games, and I do want to mention that this is a reunion of sorts for Sarah and I, because our last collaboration was back like 7 years ago. Let's take a look at that video real quick of this. Yeah.
Don't forget about this. It goes in the game. You're not supposed to have fun. Making games is hard work. Next slide. By the way, before I go any further, a big hand for Katie from Gone Home, my booth babe.
All right, yeah. So that was the last thing we did together. I mean, I'm somewhere in that picture. That's my friend Rick Chivo, who
right. Our dear mutual friend Rick Chivo.
Yeah, it's a famous indie developer. Yeah, the legend. But this show isn't about us. It's about the graduating projects from the NYU Game Center 2021. So let's get right to it. And I think coming up next, stay tuned for the official teamwork test. We'll be looking at that trailer in a second.
Incorporated annual team building event. The the official teamwork test, a multi-tiered, mandatory, potentially deadly event where departmental groups work together to solve repetitive and confusing tasks. Congratulations! You folks are going to be the first team through the system. Got it? Great.
All right. We have with us now the developers of the official teamwork test, Charlie Harper and Jingy Lee. Thank you for joining us. This game looks amazing, sounds amazing. Great voice acting on that, Charlie. I love that. And got it. Great. We got what's your opinion? Okay, we got 2 thumbs up from the pro.
Two thumbs up. It's such an honor. Thank you. Smooth, cheery, corporate. Very nice.
Good.
Excellent.
Okay, I'm taking notes. Thank you.
So we've got the theme, right? We're in an office. It's a little bit sinister and dystopian and deadly. But tell us about the form of this game. Like, how is this played? Because I think this is the interesting part that might not be immediately obvious.
Yeah, so this game is a little bit difficult to grasp right away. It is an asymmetrical co-op game that is played on multiple different platforms. So one person is this big team leader character. They get this first person perspective. They wander these offices, solve these puzzles, and up to 4 other players can join online in any sort of browser. So mobile or computer browser, you log in and you get your own set of tasks to solve and like interconnected puzzles to help the team leader ultimately print and deliver the quarterly reports for Big Corporation Incorporated.
And that's what we're seeing, the smaller inset screens, right? Those are sort of like, you know, like you might be playing on a mobile device or in a browser. Exactly. If you're one of the other players.
Yeah.
So this game is kind of a feat of network engineering too. It's like got a little bit of keep talking, nobody exposed, but a little bit of space team.
Yeah.
Was that the most challenging part of development, or is there something else that came up while you were making it that you didn't expect?
Yes, I think this and the switch between engines that we made mid-production was huge for us. Jingy, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Is it our bedtime story for the ultimate nightmare of packaging an Unreal build for Windows and Mac OS, especially Mac OS? Because it was a lot. Because there are many cool features inside the Unreal Engine, but there are also features that just not so cool. It's like, oh, there are many free assets in the Unreal Marketplace. Yes, but it also could take up to hours just compiling these shaders. Like, and also it has such a cool material editor in the Unreal Engine, right? But some features doesn't support in Mac OS. And also like it has like very cool lightning support, but yeah, some features like just don't support in Mac OS.
I feel like we're like getting a little tiny microcosm of the Epic versus Apple trial that's been going on.
Possibly.
Are you going to submit this as evidence? Excuse me.
Yes, sure. Yeah. Our main switch to Unreal came about because we were working through like a lot of networking issues. We made our server a couple of different times from scratch, like poking around Node.js and Socket.io and just seeing what would work for us. And yeah, it's really like a marriage of 2 different types of games, a browser game and a first person experience, and like merging those in the right way. We kind of stumbled into it, especially like in this last semester. Yeah.
Everything I know about like just making games as a student just feels like stuff that, you know, practice and make sure you experience finishing something. Blah, blah. This is so ambitious. This is not only like network ambitious and like platform ambitious and puzzle ambitious. Like perhaps most people would tackle one of those for a project, even just in life, much less while doing school. So this is, I'm impressed. I'm very impressed.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so I also wanted to ask you about the way that players communicate in this game, right? Because that's something that's sort of left to the players to figure out how to do, right? And even
And like, you don't prohibit players from screen sharing or communicating. And like, I think most of the people who've play tested this, when I play it, I've been playing it over Zoom. But like, I want to hear what your guys' design thoughts are about that whole process.
Yeah, I mean, this game was born out of the way we're all like shifting online and playing online together and how different that feels now. And so we're kind of catering it to that audience, right? Catering it to this sort of like collaborative shouting over Discord channels and Zoom and Slack messages, and just like fitting into whatever kind of mode people have to play together. That was our real goal, and to just get people communicating in exciting but also frustrating ways. Frustrating in a good way.
Yeah.
Right, in that way where you're like talking about something you're looking at on your small interface, but you can't quite describe what it is, right?
Mm-hmm. I want to get it. Can I have it? When do I get it?
There is definitely a demo on itch right now, but I'm going to be pushing some changes over the summer too that you can just keep track of on either my Twitter or the itch page.
And what are your plans for the future of this game? Like, what would you like to see? Where would you like to see it go? What do you think is the right way for people to eventually get their hands on it?
I don't know. No, but it's been like a wonderful journey for both of us making this game, and I see it like evolving and changing as we both like keep working on it as our lives evolve and change. So.
This strikes me as such a good party game and a good game for online parties too, because you could be in the same place, but you don't need to be. And I know Charlie, like I remember since way back early on, you were always really interested in this idea of games that you can play with when people have different devices, with like one person like using a computer or a VR headset, and other people using mobile devices. And I think that there's something there, right? In terms of when people are gathered together in groups, there's the traditional sit around the TV on a couch, but then there's also so many other possibilities that have yet to be explored. So yeah, it's nice.
Thank you.
I'm stoked. As someone who's played games collectively for like, it's been a lifesaver for this last year. I'm so excited to add, even when people go hang out, I'm gonna be like, we're playing this game though, stay home, get on there and play with it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
There have been a lot of social deduction games, right? But not as many, like co-op games. So I think that's really
teamwork.
interesting.
Heck yeah.
Teamwork makes the dream work. Synergy team.
All right, I think we are gonna say goodbye to the teamwork test team, and now we've got to go on to our next project. Thank you so much for being here, Charlie and Jingy. Coming up next, it's going to be Rhubarb Roastery. That's our next project, so stay tuned. All right, we're here with the Brew Crew, the team behind Rhubarb Roastery. It's Sasha Scudder, Jess Ariane, and Z Duran. Thank you all so much for coming by. And yeah, so this game, it's a mobile game, right? This is primarily for iOS. Yeah, and as we can see in the trailer, there's a very detailed process of brewing coffee drinks. But then there's something else going on. There's a important choice for each drink, right? Can you guys tell us like what's happening in terms of how you're serving these to customers?
Yeah,
definitely. Go ahead, Sasha.
Okay. So yeah, there's a lot of this sort of very in-depth latte making process, but the sort of twist that we've thrown into it is that you infuse all of your lattes with various flowers or plants, and each of those plants using florography has like a secret hidden meaning. So let's say you want to infuse someone's latte with a little bit of tulip, that will infuse them with the emotion of passion.
Nice. And so there's like an interesting narrative structure here, right? Like each of the characters, I think you guys have like something like 4 different customers, right? In the current builds. They have different, am I right in thinking that there are sort of different storylines that they follow or different endings they reach depending on kind of what mood you're pushing them towards? Like what's the underlying structure there?
Yeah, so this is something that we put a lot of effort into, which Naomi, I think you know a lot about probably. But don't tell it to a movie. What's the deal? So for Sarah's sake, each character is charted on 2 different axes, and so their progression is on a grid. And each quadrant of that grid represents a different ending and also a different path. So depending on where you are in that character's story, you're going to get different dialogue based on their location on the chart. And each ingredient that you give them pushes them in a different direction. So you sort of gradually accumulate this relationship with them over time that's reflective of all of the encounters that you've ever had with them. Do you see the grid? Do you have access to the grid itself? Is that exposed to the player, or is that sort of underneath cues?
That's
all on the back end. We really
Mm-hmm.
want to prioritize like a really like organic feeling. So there are indicators that are like, you know, so and so is going down like a melodramatic path or something, but it's very much like abstracted for the players that it feels really natural. I can't think of any other I think Pip and Bar did maybe a coffee making game a very, very long time ago, but this is undiscovered, cozy, tactile territory to me. I'm excited.
Yeah, would you guys say that like, were you looking at particular games as an influence for this one?
There were a lot of them. I know that, so Z actually first pitched the sort of like coffee shop simulator game concept to us, and then Sasha and I sort of like joined after we heard all of his ideas. We definitely obviously looked at Coffee Talk a lot because it's another game that's very much about like building relationships with customers over time and serving them coffees. But there were a lot of other like cozy games that we had in mind as well.
And it definitely has that cozy feel. And you guys are putting together both the coffee making part with all the narrative and characters, including like one of your first customers I think is a skeleton. Give you some of those Undertale vibes.
There's one not very cozy customer it's like
you have a very angry customer. Yeah, like and they're also different, like strong flavors. But what's your favorite part of this that you worked on? And maybe it was different for each of the 3 of you. Was there something that like really seized you when you were making this game?
Yeah, I think it might be totally different depending on which 3 of us you ask. But I think all of us really enjoyed honing in on capturing this like cozy, atmospheric feel that we really wanted players to have. And I felt like every time we met and like discussed what like the current state of the game and where we wanted to go, it felt like we were always talking about honing in on that factor. And I think we've really got something that like we really enjoy and people who have played the game really enjoy. And I think we're getting closer and closer to really capturing that super cozy, laid back vibe that we're going for.
It's a good game for self-medicating. And like on 2 levels. Yeah.
Well, there's something so magical about just the way those beans are bouncing and clicking around going into that grinder. It's something so simple, right? And I have to say, I showed this trailer to a 1-year-old earlier, and she immediately recognized that it was coffee tamping and started saying tamp, tamp, tamp. So you've got you've got a built-in audience in the next generation already. So you guys are you planning on releasing this on iOS, and what else do you want to add to it or change about it before then? Is there do you have the balance of different types of interactions where you want it to, or is there something more that you have planned?
I think we're all really proud of like how far we've managed to take it in just this 1 year, but we definitely want to keep working on it. We have kind of a list of plans of stuff that we want to add and kind of finish refining. We're going to add another character. We're going to we have another mechanic that we're going to slip in there. But yeah, we are planning to release on iOS hopefully later this year.
Nice. Excellent.
That's exciting. I think people are really taken with the tamp as a game verb because the chat's popping off. It's tamp town in there.
Yeah, tamping it's so satisfying.
It's also one of like the first images that we had. We were like, we know we need to have tamping in there somewhere.
Yeah.
And there's something really nice. So when if you tamp messily, then you get like coffee grounds on the surface, right? And the penalty for that is that then you just have to clean up the coffee grounds. And I thought that there's something kind of fantastic about that. It's like not, it has nothing to do with score, nothing to do with affecting the drink. It's just like, no, you have to spend time cleaning up.
Aww.
Did you learn? Oh, sorry. That's something we tried to do with most of our mechanics is make a lot of these like really soft fails so that even if you quote unquote messed something up, you still found it enjoyable. So even if something goes not quite according to plan, it's still like a new and unique experience.
Lovely. Was there anything, so and the meanings of the flowers, those are totally custom and unique to the game and the part of the player's discovery, or is there anything pulled from, because there's been lots of flower languages in time, eh?
Yeah, we leaned on that a lot. We looked up, most of it, right? Like we just Googled stuff and then found like guides online, but we did try to like really consistently like associate like the term floriography was thrown around a lot in our like developers chat. And so we did try to make it consistent in terms of like, if somebody is like a gardener and like is really familiar with like all of the flowers and plants that we're using, hopefully they will recognize sort of the meaning that we've ascribed to it, and that it'll sort of like resonate with people who have experience with plants in a way that we have only sort of simulated in a game.
Very cool.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for coming by. It's great, and we look forward to like where you take this game over the next year. So yeah, Rhubarb Roastery, stay tuned for it on iOS. And now we are going to move on to our next game coming up shortly. Will be Short Walk to the A Train. So stay tuned for that trailer coming up next. Thanks, Brew Crew.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you guys.
Congrats.
Bye.
Thanks.
right, we're here with the developer of Short Walk to the A Train, Emmy Schaffeld. Thank you so much for coming by. So Emmy, this is a very different kind of story game, a different approach to dialogue. Yeah, I think it would be great. Could you explain it for our viewers at home?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you mentioned, it's a little bit different than other maybe narrative games where you play one character and you have like dialogue choices about what you want the character you're embodying to say. Instead, in this game, you're kind of conducting a conversation. So how it works is you always pick which character talks next. So you can have like the character on the left say 2 lines, and then have the character on the right say 1. And you kind of like develop the rhythm of the conversation you want the 2 characters to have.
So you could end up with a conversation that's like dominated by one of the characters, or that's really like very much like back and forth. And that kind of pacing and rhythm, I mean, it reminds me so much of like the distinctions between different film directors, right? Or like, you know, director screenwriters often have like a signature style like that. And I know that, you know, you have a background in film, Emmy, right? You studied film before coming to Game Center. So were there any particular directors or cinematic influences that you're bringing into this game?
Yeah, I'm a really big fan of the director Richard Linklater. And this game was really initially heavily inspired by his movie Before Sunrise, which is a movie about 2 strangers who meet on a train and spend a night together in Vienna and just kind of talk to each other. And I kind of wanted to see like, what does a game of just like 2 people talking to each other kind of look like? And what I love about his films is like, they're very like naturalistic and grounded, but the characters are so like raw and like well developed and like multifaceted and interesting. And I wanted to like have a game, a conversation where both of the characters were like similarly like their own people, which is kind of how I got to like you don't really control necessarily what either one of them say in the first place.
They're both talkers. Does this mean there's a trilogy in the works?
Just the one for now. We'll see.
Maybe
I'll make
trains in New York City. You can walk 2.
Could do the Linklater approach of making one every 7 years.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, that'll allow you to sort of pace out all the dialogue writing. Yeah, it's interesting because you could, because it could be just like almost like an internal monologue stream of consciousness from one character. And so you sort of, I imagine that you had to kind of model what was going on in each of these characters' heads. Was that what it was like to craft them as individuals?
Yeah. So both of these characters, I love relationships where it's like 2 characters are coming from very like, you know, different points in their life and having them interact. And so in like making these characters, I like had to like, you know, figure out like what are those differences in personalities and where they are in their lives to keep the conversation interesting. And it allows like both of the characters like have opinions that are kind of similar to each other on different topics, but they kind of like gathered that experience from like different like choices they've had. Like in the demo, there's like one section where they talk about like having people like try to like argue a lot to like prove that they know more than you. And one person, like she has that because she like worked in a comic book store as a woman, and like all the male clients try to like prove that like she shouldn't be able to work there. And the other person is a medical student who's constantly like being asked questions to try to prove that they aren't good enough to like be in the career. They kind of get to the same like emotions from different points.
I'm obsessed with. I feel like I could talk about this all day. This system.
Yeah.
So I mean, because
what are you? Because Sarah, you're a voice actress, right? So when you think about the this particular dialogue system and this approach to characters really different than other games, right? And really different. Like I don't know if you're looking for voice talent for this game, maybe eventually, Emmy, but it's not a script, and it's also not exactly a bunch of just disconnected, isolated lines, right? Yeah, I don't know. So I don't know what your reaction is, Sarah.
Well, my question, I mean, I think it's what I'm interested in, and maybe this is reflected in there or not. Maybe that's my question, is just whether what happens when you start to talk at length, or you feel like you're really vibing. I mean, is the question of whether or not we're vibing, does that move toward in a way based on dominance in the conversation? How do people respond? Do they seem to fill time if that's what you choose, or like, do they start to become aware of monologuing too much? Like, there's so much around how something lands with someone else that drives you to speak or not speak or respond, that I'm really interested to see what that would look like under the hood, or what that feels like playing the game. Very interested.
Yeah, that definitely happens. Like, if you keep one person talking, they can get really caught up. They're like become self-aware that they're talking too long. Yeah. A lot of the inspiration for this is like how I'm very self-aware when I have like conversations of like, am I allowing this other person to talk much? Am I rambling? Is this other person even engaged with what I'm saying? And like, these emotions were the things I was specifically trying to like capture through the dialogue. So that was definitely, yeah, for sure.
Very cool. Vibing the game.
It's a vibe.
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm here for it.
And so if I'm understanding correctly, so like depending on what gets to actually come out in the conversation, basically, which would depend on who gets to talk, the relationship between these two characters kind of changes too, right?
Yeah, a little bit. So I had this like idea in my head of kind of like the divine like normalcy, where it's like these two people were always kind of destined to meet each other and have like somewhat the framework of the conversation that they have, because they're just the two people who did meet on this specific night. And like how we were always destined in this conversation to talk about my game right now, like the things that are on their mind the night they met were always somewhat gonna come out, but the ways that those things come out specifically is what changes.
Nice.
That's so cool. Well, I want to play it. That's all.
Yeah, it's a really, really interesting direction, and I think a really worthwhile experiment. And and I don't know, maybe who knows? Maybe you'll need some voice talent at some point to really sort of breathe more life into this.
It starts with natural scripts and people reacting to each other naturally, which is a higher order than we usually get. So I'm excited.
Awesome. Good props from the talent. Excellent. All right. Thank you so much, Emmy. We are going to move along to our fourth game, and this is the last one that we'll be with Sarah for. But coming up next is Nainai's Recipe. Nainai's Recipe.
I'm hungry now. It looks so good.
Yeah, you should be, because this is yeah, it's obviously it's a cooking game, and we're here with Fanfang and Maiho, the developers. Could you guys tell us, like, hopefully it comes across in the trailer, but I want to hear in your words, what makes Nainai's recipe different from a typical cooking game?
Yeah, so before making this game, we kind of play most of the cooking game we can find, and we want to do a kind of unique cooking game. So most of the cooking games we find have this high level of abstraction and performance oriented. So we want to really dig into cooking stuff and have the player to cook a meal from preparing the food, choosing them, cutting and seasoning and tossing, then just learn how to cook and have this relaxed vibe from the game.
So like if I got, the way that Rock Band kind of gets me this close to learning drums, to actually playing drums, am I going to actually be able to cook after this? Because that would be a big win for everybody.
Yeah, the recipe are from Nainai, which is our grandma, so it's authentic and we can cook it.
Cool.
Yeah, and the amazing thing about this game is you're not learning it from like a game tutorial. You're actually just texting your Nainai, and she's sort of giving you partial instructions and telling you some things about how to make it, and you're kind of figuring it out as you go along, right?
Yeah. So how the narrative or communication with grandma work is through a mobile phone. And from the start, you can text with your grandma for a recipe, and you can also take photos of anything of the kitchen. The grandma will text you back with advice, tips, or just random thing from grandma. Yeah.
Can you tell me about Nainai's personality? Or is that a spoiler?
Yeah, we want to portray our grandma. It's loosely based on our real life, and we want her to be quirky, warm, and want the player or the character to develop more relationship with her.
Yeah, we actually tasked with our grandma to test how they will react to our and put them into the game, which is really interesting.
Yeah, and I mean, and the Nainai is in this game is like a little bit disapproving, but also supportive at the same time. I think it sort of like has a really nice balance there. And you can screw this up, like you can just completely chop the ingredients into weird shapes and then burn all of it, and then eat it right at the end. And I'm curious that like every cooking game sort of has to struggle a little bit with the feeling of creating the sensation of taste just through audio and visuals and game feel. How did you guys approach that aspect of cooking games?
Yeah, so taste is obviously a subjective matter. So we don't want the player to give the player like this is a bad taste or this is a good taste. So there's actually two parts of tasting system in our game. The first one is in any given moment, player can grab the food and have a bite. So there will be a visualization prepared for the player. For now, it's a particle system. We use different colors, saturations, movement, speeds to represent the taste. And we want the player to have a vague feeling about how it goes.
Yeah, the other part is that when you finish a dish, you send a photo to Nainai, and then I will ask you how does it taste, and we will give a player a list of options, and the player can choose by themselves to decide how the food should be tasted. A player can even lie to Nainai, even the food is really bad and it's all burned. The player can say, "Oh, it's actually good, actually delicious." And we think this is actually a really interesting moment in our real life, so we want to capture this in our game.
Is it one recipe, many recipes? Is there a future of recipes?
Yeah, for now, this is just a demo for proof of concept of how our game structure will be. And for now, there's only one recipe, but there's a lot of more ingredient you can choose from. So it's kind of sandbox. You can make whatever you want, not following the recipe. But for the future, we definitely want to add more recipe because we want the narrative to be really light for each level because each dish is a level for our game. But to proceed the story between me and my grandma, we need a lot of space or a lot of levels to build in the stories.
And I just wanted to call out one comment that I noticed on the itch page for this game, and you can get the link to that in chat, everybody who's watching. But there's a comment that says, after I played this game, I wanted to call my Nainai, so I will call her tonight. And so that's already, your game has already succeeded in getting someone to call their Nainai. So good job, game developers. And I noticed some comments in chat too that like I want to make it totally clear to everybody who hasn't tried this game that you can cut things in this game wherever the knife is. It's not sort of pre-decided. You can cut it in like sliver thin pieces, or you can cut it in really big chunks. I think somebody said like, oh, it feels analog, and it is. It's like continuous. It's just a physics simulation of a knife going through material, and it's amazing like that we haven't seen that before, and so it's really kind of a huge leap forward for cooking games. Yeah.
That's exciting.
So most of our cooking system is heavily physics based, so we want the player have as much as freedom as we can make.
What do you like to make the most of your Nainai's recipes?
Oh, I actually love vegetarian dish because I don't know, it's just my grandma make the best shiitake mushroom and boy chuck, which is also in the game. It's there's only ingredients, but you can cook.
That's awesome.
Nice. Thank you so much.
Thank
I
you.
know, and Mai, do you have a different favorite dish from your Nainai?
Tofu from the first level, because I like to see how the color looks like when they change.
Very nice, and get that nice soy sauce and stir fry color. Awesome. Thank you guys so much. And thank you so much.
What a labor of love.
Yeah, it's really is. It's a very apt description. So, and this is our last game that we're going to be looking at with Sarah. So thank you so much, Sarah, for being here.
Thank you.
It's been awesome. It's been excellent to be reunited again after all of
these years.
After all these years. And so, folks, we're going to have a short break right now for just a couple minutes, and when we return, we will have our very special mystery surprise guest. You will find out who that mystery surprise guest is. But for now, we'll say bye to Sarah. Thanks very much.
Bye, and congratulations, everybody.
Yeah, congratulations, everybody. We'll say that again after we go through our last 4 games coming up next. All right. Bye.
Bye.
All right, welcome back for the home stretch of the NYU Game Center 2021 Showcase. For this very last segment of 4 games, we were thinking about like who could we get? What kinds of guests could we bring in here that would shock and amaze the Game Center community? I know I've seen in chat that a lot of you are speculating that it might be Rick Chivo. I have to come clean that I am Rick Chivo. I've never admitted that before live anywhere, but Rick Chivo is me wearing a fake mustache and a binder. So it is in some sense Rick Chivo will be with you. But actually, I want to announce now that our special surprise guest is all the way from New Zealand, Robert Yang. Robert Yang is the special guest. So welcome, Robert. Thank you very much. Returning triumphantly to the Game Center Showcase after sort of orchestrating and kind of running the whole show from behind the scenes last year. Thanks for coming on live, Robert. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's almost noon here in New Zealand. I'm gonna have lunch maybe after this. And then I'm going to go to a house party after this that will be filled with people in person. We'll breathe on each other.
What? That's just unbelievable. I remember the first time I saw you tweet or Instagram something from a crowded nightclub in New Zealand. It's just definitely like a whole different world down there. And I know there's one question that's definitely on the minds of all of the students presenting yesterday and today. What is life like after the Game Center? What's life like after the Game Center, Robert? Can you tell them?
Oh, it's a beautiful wonderland of obligation and responsibility. You just really get to luxuriate in not the real world, but the outside world, I would say.
Right. Have you been adulting? Are you telling us that you've been adulting, Robert?
A little bit. I had to fill out a lot of forms to get moving countries is a lot of work, apparently. So
yeah, was it like that game? Was it like that game Papers, Please? Was it like Papers, Please?
It was no, Papers, Please is about America, Naomi.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. You're right.
I go to New Zealand. It was just so smooth.
Yeah, in New Zealand, it's like the wholesome games version of Papers, Please, right? It's just like
yeah, the wholesome games
frogs and birds like stamping your papers. Okay, cool. All right, let's actually get into it. We've got 4 more games left. Our first one up that's coming up right after this short break will be the Intimation Game. So stay tuned for that trailer coming up next. right, we're here with the creator of the Intimation Game, Thomas Sullivan. Thanks for joining us, Thomas. So the Intimation Game, like it said in the trailer, it's a two-player card game. I guess you would call this a non-digital game, right? Is that accurate enough?
Absolutely, and if you played with people, yes.
And would you describe this as a role-playing game, a conversation game? Like, tell us how you would explain it to people.
Great question. So I wouldn't necessarily describe it purely as a role-playing game. I think that conversation game is probably the closest thing, in that it is played with a card and with a board, but really those are just tools to facilitate having conversation and hopefully, like, you know, hearing an interesting idea that someone says during it.
Right. So one person is playing a human being and the other person is playing an AI, and you have different restrictions on how you can communicate, right? Could you tell us a little bit about the differences in how the AI player and the human player can talk in the conversation, and what motivated you to structure things that way?
Absolutely. So probably the biggest difference is that the human player, they can speak freely. You can say whatever words out loud that you want. So you're more or less talking, you know, hopefully close to how you normally would in an ordinary conversation. But the machine player is only able to say one word at a time, corresponding with each time they move a chess piece. And so to, you know, give them a little bit more leeway, they're able to move more chess pieces, but, you know, because they are machine, their natural language processing is, you know, not the best.
And what the momentum and the action of the conversation is also expressed on that chessboard, right? Because every time someone says something, you're playing a card, or maybe like one card per word if you're the AI player, and then moving a piece around on the boards. So there's that dimension of it too. Do you think of like the chessboard as being where some aspects of the conversation are happening as opposed to words, and like what's the distinction, or like what happens in each of those places?
Like, my hope is that the board is kind of like an interface, like a representation of the conversation. Like, you know, every time you say something, like, you know, you're putting an idea out into the conversation, and likewise you're putting a piece out onto the board, and that it's almost like, you know, a kind of record of, like, you know, what's been happening so far. Like, oh, you know, I moved this piece here when I said this, and now we kind of have this changing thing that kind of represents all the things we've said so far.
Yeah, what's your so do you feel like you're trying to make any particular commentary about AI or human beings' relationships with AI here?
Absolutely. So I think the biggest thing that, like, this game kind of sprung from, so, you know, people might notice the title Intimation is very similar to the word imitation, and you know, that comes from the idea in computer science that if a robot can successfully imitate a human and, you know, fool a person into thinking that it is a human, that, like, it's achieved true intelligence. But I was wondering, like, why is it that it's always expectation that, like, the machine has to be imitating the human? That's like the natural, like, be all end all of, like, what intelligence is successfully passing as a human. And thinking instead about, like, is there a way to you know, recognize intelligence and show that there might be something that can be recognized as intelligence that is more than just a program, but is not based in imitation, but perhaps in reaching out in communication, or intimation, as I'm thinking about it.
Interesting. What do you think, Robert? Do you have any questions for Thomas?
Yeah, I love all the different, like, links and connections with, like, Alan Turing and all that. I was actually thinking this kind of reminds me a little bit of Consenticle, Naomi. It's like a conversational card game between, like, two people who are, like, playing a game, but also, you know, like, talking through the game. I think it's super interesting, a great domain to work in. Thomas,
Go ahead.
I was just curious, what are your, like, general feelings and thoughts about the AI moment we live in, which I understand is a hot topic on this Zoom?
So I guess I would say that so another angle that I kind of look at this question of like, why is it that we make machines imitate humans, is I think about like the ways that humans in a lot of ways already operate similarly to AI, and that like we often go by procedures and rules, and some of them we just don't think about as such. And so like we have perpetuate the sharp distinction between like AI and humans, as though this realm of like technology and the realm of like living breathing humans are like so far apart. But like I think that when we set up that divide, we maybe miss out on the ways that like perhaps the way we as operate as humans is already closer to AI. And so I don't know if that really answers the question completely. Like I think I would maybe encourage, like, as we're thinking about AI, to be thinking about it less as some arcane knowledge, but like as something maybe that's already closer to our natural selves as humans.
Yeah, with machine learning, there's such a theme now of computers kind of acting like a weird version of an average person or the collective consciousness, right? And I feel like we're almost at a point where we're starting to see human beings, like especially in creative fields, imitating that style, right? So like that becomes a new standard. And that's just like a super weird, some sort of, I wouldn't call it a singularity. It's like whatever the inverse of a singularity is. It's like a kind of weird creative nadir, where now it's like, oh, well, can you do it in the house style, which is just like this, whatever, like a deep, Google Deep Dream AI produces for poetry or marketing copy or whatever. And that's, yeah, that feeling, I don't know, comes across a little bit in your game too.
Yeah, it's like I absolutely do think so. I actually maybe not necessarily that's not something we shouldn't be looking at critically, but I do think that when we dismantle, when we like view ourselves as maybe technology is something worth imitating, I think it raises really interesting questions. Like I feel like that's one of the things that like the cyberpunk genre that's been really increasingly prominent in discourse lately is thinking about is like what sort of things are gained or like potentially lost or just troubled when we really integrate ourselves with technology in that way. And that includes our mindset and not just our bodies.
All right. Awesome. Thank you so much, Thomas, for showing us this. And so what's the future for the Intimation game? Like what version are you planning on putting out next? Where are people going to be able to play it or encounter it?
Great question. So I'm really looking forward, as more and more people are getting vaccinated and able to go out in public, towards getting more people to be able to play this in person. And to that end, I'm looking forward to putting out a print and play version that will hopefully be forthcoming soon on myitch.io. And I think really I just want as many people to get like the physical experience of playing this in person with someone else as possible. I have a digital version that kind of has been more, for placeholder purposes and testing, but that wasn't its intended domain. I want people to feel and experience this in front of another person.
Gotcha. All right, thanks. We'll look forward to that moment when we all get to play stuff together again, including Robert, because you have to come visit from New Zealand. We can't play card games.
No, I can play online.
You can just play it on the Playing Cards.io version forever.
As Gemstone says in the chat, right? Yeah.
It's true. So New Zealanders can play it now. We can play it right now. You're right. All right. Thanks, Thomas. We got to move on to the next game, but we appreciate you being here. And coming up next, we're going to watch the trailer and then talk about Damage Dealer. So stay tuned for Damage Dealer coming up next. All right, we're here with Gil Lawson, the creator of Gil Lawson's Damage Dealer. Nice. First, I just have to ask you the title. Was that are you adopting recommendation from Bennett Foddy and Zach Gage to like put your name on the front of your game?
Yeah, GDC talks are a huge influence on me, of course. I think, I mean, yeah, I agree with the ethos. Why not attribute myself?
Absolutely. And from that, which brings me to a question for Robert. How come we don't see more Robert Yang games that aren't like, Robert Yang's Cobra Club?
Oh, I don't know. I just feel like, people who just put their names in games like Bennett Foddy are just, it's a little bit gauche, honestly. Do you really want to be that arrogant and just like throw your name you don't really need to do that.
Yeah, but think about how good it would sound. Robert Yang's Hard Lads. It's Robert Yang's Hard Lads. Okay, I'm sorry. Let's talk about Damage.
Yeah, let's talk about Robert Yang.
Let's talk about Damage. So we're looking at the game like right next to us. There's so much going on. I don't even know how to describe this game. Your short tagline is that it's a narrative simulation about tending to sick machines in an exploding desert. But can you tease that out a little bit more for us, Gil?
Sure. So you play as a man named Kashmir Alkaline, a repairman who has lived in this desert for decades, taking care of these machines, these enormous pylons filled with bizarre biomechanical components that fail occasionally, and that seem to be holding the world together in a way that is a little ambiguous as the game starts. And then at the opening of the game, these machines have begun to fail faster and faster. And so you as a player, as Kashmir Alkaline, are put in the position of traversing this desert, fixing these machines as they're breaking down, diagnosing them, finding ways to resolve what's wrong with them, and keeping yourself alive while untangling this kind of larger story about what these machines are, what's happening as they're breaking down, and what your place in it is.
And we have a comment from chat already that I think might be like an interesting question. Powerful Benjamin says, I feel like this dev lived in Santa Fe.
What a read. Yeah, I grew up in New Mexico. There's a lot about that setting, both like just in terms of the physical environment, in terms of but also in terms of the culture, in terms of the kind of society there that is very underrepresented and underexplored in games, definitely, and in fiction, I think, in general, and in science fiction. It's a underexplored setting. So this game is very personal for me for a few reasons, and that's definitely one of them, is an attempt to kind of bring this setting into games, into broader culture in a way that retains what I think is interesting about it, while also, drawing people in.
Can you tell me a little bit about this aspect ratio?
Yeah.
And like the whole UI, like what's your how are you in the screen border and stuff? It's so interesting.
Yeah, a big part of this game is about the kind of materiality of the player, about like your constant awareness of being fixed in time and in space, and in being kind of physically embodied, and that shows up in a lot of different ways in how the game is built. One is this very tight aspect ratio, this kind of omnipresent, meaty UI that I think the UI will change as things are happening in the environment, as like, if you start to overheat because you're out in the middle of the desert, the UI will turn very red and begin to move very actively. If you're out at night when the temperatures plummet, it'll kind of crisp up and slow down. And then I try to keep the same like ethos of constant physicality going in everything. We just saw, but there's no like inventory that items get abstracted away to as 2D icons. The items that you carry with you have to be carried in this tackle box. You always have to account for like these things that you're carrying around and dealing with as physical objects. There's never like a way of flattening things or of turning them into just, cells in an inventory. And also, I think it looks cool.
Agreed on that. As we can see, like right here on screen right now, there's also an interesting narrative going on here, right? As this desert is slowly becoming unmoored from reality, or exploding in a sense that has to do with history and time, and various inhabitants are kind of reacting to it differently. Could you talk about about the themes that you were trying to explore, and influences that you feel like are strongly in the mix?
Sure. Yeah, that's a very large question. One of the themes that's been really present for me has been thinking about the kind of history of this desert, of the kind of centuries of lives that have taken place here in a fictionalized version of the American Southwest, and in kind of reconciling this burden of history in this place, a lot of which has been covered or kind of obviated by time, with future. As a repairman, not to get too into the story, but your job is basically to ensure the continued existence of this place that isn't in danger of disappearing. And so you're in a very physical and real sense in the game working to preserve a future, to keep this desert around, to make sure that both your continued existence in it in the present tense, and that the like full nuance of this history can kind of be preserved moving forward. So there's a lot of working with what history is, what your responsibility to history is as one individual in this now mostly evacuated place, and what you're doing as someone who's kind of working to maintain this place as a future. And then another I think of the big themes has been kind of what maintaining life looks like. Like, this is a desert. I think for a lot of people, deserts have connotations of barrenness, of dryness, of an absence of life, but this desert, as with real deserts, there's an ecosystem here. It might not be immediately visible. It might not be something that appears to us as fecund environments normally appear to us, but that there is like a world here where people live, where plants live, where creatures maintain life. And so you're figuring out what it means to keep that alive, I think.
Awesome, thank you. Any other reactions you want to share, Robert? It's a very game of very strong vibes and atmosphere.
Yeah, I just want to know more about like, what are your plans with it, right? Like, when am I gonna see this on the Epic Store or whatever?
There's a demo up now, a demo kind of covering the first 2 days of the game. There's a story here that I want to tell and that I'm in the process of telling. So my plans for the game are to kind of continue telling that story, to flesh it out. What that means, the plot of the game is written, it's scaffolded. There's a lot of work to be done to obviously realize that in the game, but my intentions for the game are to continue working on it and to see this story through.
Does that mean like no early greenlight release where you just sort of get it parceled out episodically, or is that
There's a demo up for now. We'll leave that up and see where that takes us.
That makes sense. All right, thank you so much, Gil.
Thank you.
And thank you for showing us this fascinating game. Really appreciate it. And we're going to move on to the next game coming up right after this. Stay tuned for the trailer for Roadshop. Roadshop is next. All right, thank you so much. We were here with the team behind Roadshop, Christine, Courtney, Max, Stefan, and Aaron. Thanks you guys so much for being here. I want to ask you guys first about the story behind this game, because I know, like, and many of the folks watching know that Christine, you're an MFA at the Game Center, but the rest of the team are folks from outside the Game Center. So I just want to start first by asking, how did this project get started? How did it happen? How did you guys all come together?
So I deliberated on sort of like the idea of a restaurant-based game for quite a while. And then around the summertime, I was just like, all right, I'm gonna like go make my own game, and I'm gonna work on it with people that I've basically known for a very long time now. And a lot of them were from my undergrad. So when I approached them, I was just like, hey guys, do you want to make, like, this was my initial pitch, was like, do you guys want to make like a hot furry himbo visual novel game? And of course we were all like, yes, because that's the vibe. And then honestly, we just sort of got started immediately.
Yeah, I couldn't say no. I really wanted to help with this.
So that was the unifying creative goal that you all shared, is encapsulated in the words hot furry himbo visual novel. Right?
Yeah, basically.
But it's more than that too, right? It's also a game where you're sort of exploring this beautiful environment that we're seeing right over here, right? This forested landscape that I'm sure like has its own story going on, and has all of these amazing creature and character designs, and also as a cooking game, right? So yeah, how'd you guys put together all of those pieces, and were there challenges in fitting them together?
Narrative wise, I just took the idea of cooking and the general feeling of how people can kind of get drawn together by like food that they like or that they don't like, and then the idea of like a person who kind of has the bartender's role or the shopkeeper's role of being able to talk to and interact with these people who are coming from a bunch of different backgrounds, and just talk over like their problems or their goals over a meal that you make them, so they can enjoy it together. And like the original pitch that was given to me was just like, hey, want to make a game about like the complex relationships between a person and their boss, and then all these other customers that'll come by. And I'm like, that sounds like a lot of fun, so of course I'm going to be into it and just work with the mechanics that I'm given to try and integrate as much of like the coziness and the ways that different people will interact with each other into a game as I could.
Help me understand now this hot furry himbo aspect. What do they like to eat? And like, what do we like say to them? Like, help me like visualize and like feel and stroke this himbo in my mind, of course.
Beryl is a very interesting character. He doesn't like ice cream. He doesn't understand it. I can at least tell you that much. But like a lot of it is sort of like back to those complex relationships. So like the whole like narrative arc with Beryl is that in his previous occupation, he was sort of a celebrity figure and sort of put up a particular public mask that as you interact with them on a much more personal level starts to like fall apart, and you start to see sort of like the real person within. And then he has a lot of white lies and half-truths and false stories that he uses to sort of like mask his like insecurities and things like that. So a lot of the things he say could be true, but a lot of the things he says aren't. And like the whole point of the game is to sort of like actually listen to sort of what characters are saying, and you're going to have to rely on your own intuition to see like what's really true and what's not. Because like one of the things that we felt was important when sort of writing the game is the unreliable narrator. You can't really trust anybody to really say anything that might be in their best judgment at all. Like Beryl might have a particular beef with like the cat Albus or whatever you see in the screenshot, and he might just like make stuff up just so you can maximize, I don't know, potential to just like mess with her for no other reason than his entertainment. And that's up to you to decide whether or not you're going to indulge it.
Wow, himbos are complicated.
Yeah, here I thought
So
they
simple,
were
yet
so
so
simple.
complex.
Yeah, I thought the appeal was that they were very simple, but it turns out there's all these hidden depths. I feel like you guys are sort of exploring maybe this idea of having like a problematic crush, right? And I know that's like often like a fraught topic in internet culture, right? Like, well, is it okay to portray this relationship where one person might be a jerk, might be a liar, might be manipulating? Were you guys trying to say something like make a statement about that type of relationship, or about like what kinds of relationships we should be able to portray in fiction and creative works?
I guess we're sort of making a statement, but we're also just sort of making the games we want to make. And I think we like characters that are pretty complex, even if and like flawed, even if they don't necessarily reflect what we believe in. And we don't really want any like playable character to be a blank slate. I think the biggest like draw for us is that you don't really, like, unlike other like romantic like visual novels, you don't really have the option to sort of like choose another partner to try and get with if you don't like this relationship. You actually have to sit there and like work through it. And we're not really interested in like whether people think these characters are morally good or anything like that. We're more interested in if they evoke an actual reaction out of you. So if you come out of that game saying Beryl sucks and I hate him, that's great, because like that was a compelling character you could engage with. If you come out of it thinking player character also sucks because they like somebody like Beryl and don't really care, that's also great.
Well, yeah, I think that's legit. Any last reactions or questions, Robert?
No, I just wanted to know more about like your future plans. Like, are you gonna keep working on this, or are you going to like make another project together?
Yeah, we definitely love to keep working on this. There's a bunch of other characters that we have on the backlog, and like we love to flesh this out, everything.
There are so many other music tracks other than the one that you heard in this trailer. I hope we get to keep on working on this. I want everyone to hear all of those things we've been working on.
Oh,
I'm seeing a lot of
absolutely.
nodding. All right, well, Christine, it sounds like the team is all willing to keep going. Are you gonna keep leading them forward into?
Please, Christine, please.
The world needs more furry games, and I'm here to deliver. So sit back and sit
All
back.
right, well, thank you, Roadshop team, for undertaking this brave work, addressing the need of the world for more himbos, more furries, more horny games about food, all of that. Excellent job. Robert and I both applaud you. All right, thank you so much. All right, we are almost to the end of the show. Our next game is our final game for the evening, and so it's Sokoban Alchemist. That trailer will be coming up next. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right, fantastic trailer. Thank you so much to the team behind Sokoban Alchemist. We're joined by Julia Wong, Will Jiang, Stephen Chen, and William Shui. Thank you for being here. All right, this game, I remember when you guys started working on this, and it had some of the elements we're seeing, but now it's become so much more. What do you sort of describe what Sokoban Alchemist is? What's your elevator pitch for this game?
All right, sure. So the Sokoban Alchemist, as the name referred to, we got heavily inspired. We got the inspiration from the traditional Sokoban game, but we actually want to build an action adventure game with Sokoban kind of gameplay as our core mechanism. Thus, our game, but our game is very different from the traditional Sokoban game, as you can tell already. So the players play as a protagonist, a cat-like alchemist, has the ability to dash and vault over the broad cage to create consistent action gameplay. And also as an alchemist, the protagonist can emerge, transform the environmental materials, and use them as tools or weapons. Since the protagonist actually doesn't have the ability to deal damage directly to the enemies or the environment, so utilizing the element boxes around the protagonist are the key ingredient to defeat the enemies or solve the puzzles in the game.
Awesome. And so I remember for quite some time, and still in parts of the game, there are levels that you're sort of going through, solving puzzles, defeating particular enemies, fighting bosses. But now I think, in more recent versions of this game, you've added a sort of an open world sandbox. It's no longer level based. What took you guys in that direction?
Oh yeah, that's actually a very giant design change that we made as a design progress. So we did try to make a roguelike game with connected level modules, just like the Splunky, which is one of the references that we used to have. But it turned out to be heavily reliant on level design, and which makes trying to make the game feels intriguing. And it creates a very heavy level design workload because it's pretty hard for us to create, constantly create so many levels that it's interesting to play with. So these connected modules can definitely create many interesting gameplay for sure, but we want to make the game more emergent. We want to make a world out of it instead of putting together a lot of dungeons to make our the background story shatter into pieces. So we moved to procedural generated open world design like Don't Starve. There are different creators, different environment with different enemies. There are treasures, caves, traps in the huge world for players to explore. But still, those modularized levels are not casted away completely. We integrate them into the open world and made them our dedicated dungeon level with higher rewards for the players. So the players can, and also they are scattered around in the open world. So players can, go into those dungeons and get more, higher reward through those dungeons. Yeah.
What do you think, Robert? You might remember seeing this game back in the fall, but it's changed quite a bit. I'm curious if you have impressions.
Yeah, it's just so interesting. Like I love how it's like so cute yet like kind of violent. Like we have all these like cute characters and stuff, and then we're like obliterating them and like destroying them. Yeah, can you tell me more about maybe some of like the combat design? I think Alexander actually has a really great question in the chat too related to this, right? Like how'd you tune the combat feel? How do you make all this stuff readable in the context of Sokoban?
Yeah, so originally the enemy attacked without any like signals, and you can see now before the enemy attacked, it has like a animation and the grid warning on the ground, so that the player could predict where and when to jump out of that area. And also currently in the some like specific levels, there are only some types of the boxes. The player could only use these boxes to fight. Sometimes there are only like fire enemies, and without there are not some ice box and not some wooden box. So you have to find the solution how to deal with that. And even more when there are no boxes ever, and there are like different types of enemies, you need to make them fight with each other so that you could make good use of their interactive like compact. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I
so-
love how all that comes across, and it feels so like fast and juicy and stuff, which is not usually something you associate with the Sokoban genre. So it's like yeah, like a really interesting mix of all these different like influences and feels.
Yeah, it's for sure an action puzzle game, right? And that's also something that I feel like definitely hasn't been tried with Sokoban. So nice work, and it feels like so much work has gone into this. It's a pretty big scope of a game now that it has levels and bosses and maybe I've heard you guys talking recently about having big bosses on the overworld too. What are your plans for continuing to work on it, or like are you how far are you from finishing it, and what other things are you going to add?
Yeah, currently as you can see in the game, we have done most of the Sokoban mechanic logic, like a pushing, kicking, and vaulting, and merging. Merging is the new mechanics we add to the game, makes the game feel more deep, so that you can transfer one box into another one. And but now in the narrative part, it has just started. So the game is called Sokoban Alchemist, but now it's just like a Sokoban playground. We'll dive into the history and the culture of the alchemist and the alchemy. And we are at more Asian religious story and legends as our background story. And also we are like differentiate the open world with many like mountains, rivers, or castles, villages, to make it more like a real RPG world that worth traveling and exploring.
Well, it's really exciting, you guys. Thank you so much for showing it to us. All right, I think we're just about out of time. Thank you guys for bringing us home to the end of the show and being the final game to be shown. So big round of applause for Sokoban Alchemist. Congratulations. And yeah, we're at the end. So I think we're gonna do one more short break, and then we're gonna go to the wrap-up announcements. So let's say bye to the Sokoban Alchemist team. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to the NYU Game Center 2021 Showcase. I'm joined now by the faculty and staff of the NYU Game Center, including, of course, our very special mystery guest, Robert Yang, who until recently was part of the faculty too. We're all really excited to be on screen with Robert again. I wanted to do some thanks and credits really quickly at the close of the show. Thanks to our sponsors, Fresh Planet, Take Two, Empire State Development, and Parsec. And big thanks to everybody who contributed to the show. Our hosts, Frank Lantz, Clara Fernandez-Vara, Charles Pratt, and me. And our guests, Rebecca and Adam Saltzman, who started off the show with Frank, Mary Kenny, who hosted with Clara, Greg Heffernan, who was with Charles earlier tonight, and then Sarah, Elmaleh, and Robert Yang, just rounding out the last hour with me. Our amazing poster artist, Rebecca Dunlap, and who did the artwork that you saw advertising this show, all the music that played throughout the interstitial parts of the evening, Cosmo D, Charlie Hadabah, Noel Balamuki, the Heavy Meadow Ensemble, and Krishan Rajaratnam of Team Coconut played all the music that you heard this evening. And then last but not least, the amazing Student Showcase Committee that was instrumental in putting all of this together: Charlie Harper, Alina Constantine, Mai Ho, Fan Fong, Christine Foron, Jenny Bork, Dayun Lee, June Elesgui, and Isaiah Rosa. Last but not least, I want to give a super special shout out to Logan Claire right next to me here. Logan has been behind the scenes running all of this, making this stream happen, doing it, and is the voice behind the mellow, super smooth voice that you hear in the discourse every week as well. So big round of applause for the invisible hands of Logan Claire. All right, anybody else have anything you guys want to add before
thanks to all the teams, all the projects. Yes, amazing. Great work, incredible. Thanks to chat for keeping it hype. And
exactly, yeah, the energy level in chat, amazing.
Yep.
And you can
thank you, Gwenna.
Yeah, thank you, Gwenna.
Tony, Jessica, Hermione, Matt Parker, Matt Bach, Mitu, Bennett, and Green Room people, Maddie and Bennett, instructors of thesis and capstone, Matt and Winnie and Maddie and Charles. What else? So much. So many people in it.
Be sure to check out the huge game collection on itch. Links in chat if you want to check out most of the games that you've seen over the last 2 evenings. And yeah, and I think that might be it for the semester and for the showcase. Thank you guys all so much for being here. All right, and we'll ring it out there. Good night and good luck.